powerful divorce lawyer is used to bending the law in his favor, but when he tries to take down the wrong woman, his arrogance leads him straight into a nightmare he never saw coming. How will he react when the one person he never expected walks into the courtroom with evidence that could end his entire career? Let us know in the comments section below. You're a smart woman, Maya. Ethan Chambers leaned back in his chair, his smirk curling at the edges like a predator savoring its next meal. You had to know this day would come. Maya Caldwell didn't flinch. She sat perfectly still across from him in the sleek, cold conference room of the downtown courthouse, her hands clasped in her lap. She had dealt with men like Ethan before, men who mistook arrogance for intelligence, who thrived on their ability to manipulate the system. She had spent years protecting women from men just like him, and now here he was, trying to intimidate her. I wasn't aware I owed you anything, Ethan, she said smoothly, lifting a brow. Unless, of course, this is your way of asking for legal advice. In that case, my rates are steep. His smirk wavered for a second before returning, a shade colder. You're funny, I'll give you that. He tapped his fingers against the thick folder in front of him. But here's what's not funny. Embezzlement. Maya let out a soft breath through her nose. So this was the game he wanted to play. The moment she had received the lawsuit notice, she had known Ethan was behind it. He was a fixture in the divorce world, notorious for bleeding his clients' spouses dry and making sure the women who left wealthy men walked away with nothing. He had lost a major case against her last month when she helped a prominent businesswoman escape an abusive marriage, without Ethan managing to rob her blind in court. That loss had embarrassed him, and Ethan Chambers did not tolerate embarrassment. Now he was coming for her directly. She reached forward and calmly slid the folder toward herself, flipping it open. Inside, the papers detailed fraudulent claims that she had siphoned money from her own non-profit organization, Women Rise, which helped victims of domestic abuse start fresh. Fabricated. Every last page. Maya felt a flicker of anger in her chest, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she closed the folder, set it back down, and met Ethan's gaze head-on. "This is cute," she said. "I assume you paid someone to fake the financial records, or did you take the time to do it yourself?" Ethan's smirk widened. "You can't afford to fight this, Maya. Your accounts are frozen. The courts will seize everything if you don't settle." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Just walk away. Close your organization. Take what little you have left and go." There it was. This wasn't about the money. At least, not entirely. This was personal. Ethan didn't just want to take her down. He wanted to erase her. Maya folded her hands on the table, tilting her head slightly. "You must really be desperate," she mused. "If you're coming after me like this, it means you're afraid." Ethan's nostrils flared, his smug demeanor faltering for the first time. "You're bluffing," he scoffed. "There's no way out of this." Maya smiled, just enough to make him uncomfortable. "Let's find out, shall we?" By the time Maya left the courthouse, the weight of what had just happened settled over her like a storm cloud. Ethan had power, and he had influence. If this case went to trial, it wouldn't just be about proving her innocence. It would be about exposing him before he could bury her. She had spent years building Women Rise from the ground up. She had seen women arrive at their doors broken, terrified, believing there was no way out of the nightmare they lived in. She had given them hope. Now, Ethan wanted to take that away. "Are you okay?" Maya turned at the sound of her best friend and business partner, Deja Marks, jogging up beside her. Deja, a tall woman with sleek braids and a take-no-prisoners attitude, was one of the few people who could read Maya without her having to say a word. "I'm fine," Maya said, though they both knew it was a lie. "It's Ethan." Deja scowled. "I knew that vulture wasn't going to let that last case go. What's he trying now?" Maya handed over the folder. Deja flipped through it quickly, her expression darkening with every page. Oh, he's bold," she muttered. But sloppy. These numbers don't even match up with the real books. Anyone with sense could see that. But that's not how Ethan plays, Maya reminded her. He doesn't have to be right, he just has to make enough noise that the courts believe him. If I can't access my accounts, I can't pay our lawyers. And if I can't pay our lawyers, I lose. Deja was quiet for a second, then looked up. So what's the plan? Maya exhaled slowly. We fight. Fighting Ethan Chambers wasn't going to be easy. He had built his entire career on rigging the system in his favor. He knew every judge, every loophole, and every underhanded way to make an accusation stick. But Maya wasn't some defenseless victim. She was tired of men like Ethan thinking they could get away with anything. That night, she called in a favor. I need someone who can dig, she told Detective Nate Carter, an old friend from law school who now worked in white-collar crime investigations. I assume you're talking about Ethan, Nate said, not even needing her to clarify. You finally ready to take him down? Maya's jaw tightened. I don't have a choice. Nate was silent for a moment. Then he said, Give me 48 hours. Maya hung up the phone, staring out at the city lights beyond her apartment window. If Ethan wanted to play dirty, she would show him what real power looked like. He thought he was setting a trap for her. He had no idea she had already set one for him. Ethan Chambers had spent years perfecting his game. He manipulated, deceived, and outmaneuvered everyone in the courtroom. He didn't just win cases, he destroyed his opponents. And now Maya Caldwell was supposed to be his latest victim. He sat in his office, savoring a glass of bourbon as he flipped through the legal papers. The court had already frozen Maya's assets. If she didn't settle soon, she'd be bankrupt, her reputation ruined. That's what he had expected. But something wasn't adding up. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at his laptop screen as he reread an article that had just been published. Women rise under attack. Fraud accusations raise eyebrows in legal circles. The article wasn't an attack piece against Maya. It was against him. The journalist had dug into his past cases, pointing out a pattern. Cases where Ethan had mysteriously won with questionable evidence, clients who had suddenly flipped their stories, accusations of witness intimidation. Ethan's grip tightened around his glass. This wasn't random. This was her. Maya wasn't just fighting back. She was coming for his throat. Maya sat in her office, phone in hand, eyes locked on her computer screen as the article continued spreading across social media. Think he's sweating yet? Deja smirked from across the room, scrolling through the flood of comments tearing Ethan apart. Maya exhaled, setting her phone down. Not enough. She had learned long ago that men like Ethan didn't back down just because the truth was out there. He would double down, try to bury it, make it disappear. That's why she had to hit him harder. Her phone rang. It was Nate. We got him, he said without hesitation. Maya's pulse quickened. Tell me everything. Ethan had always been careful. Meticulous, even. But like every man who believed himself untouchable, he got sloppy when he got comfortable. And Maya had found his weakness. Nate had tracked down Ethan's former assistant, Vanessa James, a woman who had worked for him for 5 years before suddenly quitting and leaving the legal field altogether. It wasn't because she wanted to. It was because Ethan forced her out. She saw everything, Nate explained. The fake evidence, the bribes, the extortion. She has emails, bank statements, recorded conversations. Maya's grip on her phone tightened. This wasn't just about her anymore. Ethan had built his entire career on lying, stealing, and manipulating women, and it was all about to come crashing down. Will she testify? Maya asked. Please scared, Nate admitted. But if she sees you standing up to him, she might find the courage to do the same. Maya closed her eyes for a second. She knew how it felt to stand at the edge, wondering if the risk was worth it. But she also knew the cost of staying silent. Set up a meeting, she said. I'll handle the rest. Ethan slammed his laptop shut, his chest heaving. He had underestimated her. Maya wasn't scrambling. She was strategizing. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His private investigator. Yes, I'm a bear, he snapped, barely containing his rage. There's a problem, the man on the other end said. Vanessa James. She's resurfaced. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Feeling resurfaced. She's been talking to someone, and rumor is she's coming after you. Ethan's blood ran cold. Vanessa was the only person who could destroy him. If she testified, he was finished. No, he hissed, gripping the edge of his desk. Not happening. He had to stop this, whatever it took. Maya waited at the small cafe, sipping her tea as she watched the door. A few minutes later, Vanessa walked in. She looked nervous, shoulders hunched, eyes darting around the room as if expecting Ethan to appear out of thin air. Maya stood, offering her a warm smile. Vanessa? Vanessa nodded hesitantly. You're Maya Caldwell. Yes, and I know what Ethan did to you. Vanessa flinched. You don't have to be afraid of him anymore. Maya's voice was calm, steady, but filled with conviction. Vanessa let out a shaky breath. You don't get it. Ethan, he doesn't lose. If I testify— You're not alone, Maya said softly. You have proof, and you have me. Vanessa swallowed hard. If I do this, he'll come after me. Maya reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Vanessa's. That's why we make sure he never gets the chance. For a long moment, Vanessa said nothing. Then finally she nodded. I'll do it. The next morning, Ethan walked into his office, confident, determined to handle the situation before it spiraled further. But the moment he opened his laptop, he froze. His inbox was flooded. Emails, calls, messages. One headline stood out above all the rest. Prime and former assistant to Ethan Chambers. Set to testify in fraud case. Ethan's vision blurred. No, his phone rang. Ethan? It was his business partner, his voice sharp. What the hell is this? Ethan swallowed. I can't fix it. The man laughed, but there was nothing amused about it. It's over. Clients are dropping out. Your name is being dragged through the mud. You're finished. Ethan's hands shook as he gripped his phone. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But then came the final blow. His assistant stepped into his office, her face pale. Oh, sir, you need to see this? She handed him a court summons. Ethan's breath caught. He was being sued by Maya Caldwell and his former clients, and Vanessa James. The walls were closing in, and for the first time in his life, Ethan Chambers was out of moods. Ethan Chambers sat at the defense table, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He had always been the one calling the shots, the one manipulating the system, the one winning. But now he was fighting for his career, his reputation, and, if things went south, his freedom. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back, their cameras flashing as they whispered about the high-profile case. The judge sat tall on the bench, watching as the prosecution presented their next witness. And then she walked in. Vanessa James. Ethan's stomach dropped. She was actually going through with it. She took the stand, her hands gripping the edges of the seat as she adjusted the microphone. Miss James, the prosecutor began, can you please state your relationship with Mr. Chambers? Vanessa's voice shook, but she did not break. I was his assistant for 5 years. And during that time, did you witness any illegal or unethical behavior? Vanessa hesitated. She looked down at her hands, took a deep breath, and then— A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. This was it. This was the moment everything changed. Vanessa cleared her throat. I saw him falsify evidence in multiple cases. He paid off witnesses. He planted fake financial records to frame clients. And when I started questioning it, he threatened me. Ethan gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "Threatened you how?" the prosecutor pressed. "He told me if I ever spoke out, I'd never work again, that he'd ruin me." Vanessa's voice trembled, but her eyes were clear. "So I quit, and I've regretted it every day since." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then the prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit into evidence a series of recorded phone calls between the defendant and multiple individuals, proving he tampered with legal proceedings." Ethan's throat closed up. He knew what was coming next. Vanessa had kept the receipts. The moment the first recording played, Ethan's world ended. His own voice filled the courtroom. "Just make sure the paperwork looks clean. The judge won't check. He never does. I don't care how much she's offering in settlement. Make sure she gets nothing. We break her. If you open your mouth, Vanessa, I will destroy you. Do you hear me? I will ruin your life." The gasps from the audience were deafening. Even the judge's expression hardened. Ethan felt his throat close up. His lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously, "We need to settle, now." But it was too late. He wasn't in control anymore. Maya Caldwell was. Maya sat, poised and calm, watching as Ethan's downfall unfolded before her. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. And it was long overdue. When the prosecution rested, Maya's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client, Ms. Caldwell, would like to make a statement." Ethan's head snapped toward her. She stood, walked to the front of the courtroom, and turned toward him. "You tried to ruin me," she said, her voice steady. "You thought you could fabricate evidence, manipulate the system, and walk away untouched." Ethan's face twisted with fury, but he said nothing. Maya took a slow step forward. "But you made one mistake, Ethan." She smiled. "You underestimated the women you tried to break." The judge's gavel slammed against the wood. "Chambers, after reviewing the overwhelming evidence against you, this court finds you guilty of fraud, witness intimidation, and legal malpractice. You are hereby disbarred, and further criminal proceedings will determine additional charges." Ethan stopped breathing. Disbarred. His entire career gone. His legacy destroyed. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment as he stood, his knees weak, his entire body trembling. He turned to Maya, hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he hissed. Maya tilted her head. "It is." And then she turned her back on him. Because Ethan Chambers no longer mattered. Outside the courthouse, Maya and Deja stood on the steps, watching as reporters swarmed around Ethan's lawyer, demanding answers. "Oh," Deja smirked. "How's it feel to take down the most arrogant lawyer in the state?" Maya exhaled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "It feels—" She paused, thinking for a moment, then with a small smile, "like justice?" And as the cameras flashed, capturing Ethan's final desperate attempts to salvage his ruined career, Maya walked away, victorious.